It started with a dog refusing to leave the circle rug. Officer Dana Kellerman thought it was a scent trail, maybe a rodent, maybe a spill, until her K-9 partner, Brutus, began to claw the floor with a primal urgency. Beneath the cheerful colors and alphabet letters, something was buried, something that made a 92-pound German shepherd whimper like a pup. What they uncovered beneath the daycare changed everything the town thought it knew about its children, its past, and the smiling woman who ran the place. The daycare had once been a farmhouse, tucked off Lantern Hill Road where the gravel spit under tires and maples threw crooked shadows across the porch. Now, a pastel sign hung out front with wooden letters that spelled Little Lantern's Learning Nest. Beneath it, wind chimes tinkled in the dry summer air. Dana parked the cruiser just past the hedgerow and killed the engine. Brutus was already standing on the back seat, tail stiff, eyes locked on the building. He never acted this way, not unless something was wrong. The dog was a decade into service and had tracked everything from missing hikers to narcotic stuff inside teddy bears. He didn't spook easy. Inside the daycare, nothing seemed amiss at first glance. Children's drawings lined the hallway walls. Stick figure families with sunshine smiles, paper hearts, construction paper turkeys. The scent of lemon disinfectant clung to the air, masking something fainter beneath it. Something metallic. Something wrong. Mrs. Arliss? Dana called. A door creaked. From a classroom at the end, a woman emerged, dabbing her hands dry on her apron. Heavens, Officer Kellerman, you scared me. Frances Arliss looked like a grandmother from a picture book. White curls pinned neat, blouse tucked tight, eyes bright behind gold-rimmed glasses. She'd run the daycare for nearly 20 years. Everyone trusted her. Dana nodded politely. Routine K-9 pass. Just need Brutus to do a sweep. Protocol. Mrs. Arliss hesitated only a second too long, then smiled. Of course. We're just finishing snack time. You won't find any trouble here. Brutus led them, past the nap room, past the reading nook, and straight into the main playroom, a wide-open space painted with jungle murals, toys piled high in cubbies, a rainbow rug in the center. He stopped, stared, and growled. Dana narrowed her eyes. What is it, boy? Then he began scratching. Hard, fast. His nails peeled threads in the rug, uncovering dull wood beneath. He clawed so viciously Dana had to pull him back by the vest. But he wasn't panicking. He was pointing. Mrs. Arliss stood frozen near the entryway, her smile stretched taut now. I just had that floor refinished last fall. Dana stepped forward crouched and brushed the scratched floorboards. They weren't refinished. They were original. But something about one plank, the third from the rug's edge, felt different. The grain curved wrong. Dana pressed down. It shifted. She looked up slowly. You wouldn't happen to know why there's a loose panel under your playroom, would you? The woman didn't speak. Not right away. Her eyes darted to the children behind the glass door, still sipping juice, giggling. Then, flatly, she said, It's probably old plumbing. The foundation here is very. Dana jammed her fingers beneath the plank and pried. The wood groaned, then popped. A hollow space, dark, wide. And the smell hit her fully now. Something trapped and wet and old. Brutus barked. Once. Loud. Piercing. Dana shined her flashlight in. A chamber beneath the floor. Maybe 4 feet deep. Maybe more. The beam caught on something pale and frayed. Fabric. A child's blanket. Dana's voice dropped. I need backup. Now. Within 20 minutes, half the station swarmed the daycare. Yellow tape cordoned the hallway. The children had been evacuated under the care of social workers. Frances Arliss sat in the staff lounge with her hands folded neatly, refusing to say another word. Chief Morales crouched over the open floor cavity. Jesus, there's more than one chamber down here. Dana stood beside him. Her stomach hadn't stopped twisting since Brutus clawed the first board loose. They'd uncovered a network. 5 narrow crawl spaces hidden beneath the playroom and adjoining hallway, shored with age beams, walls lined with padded insulation, and small objects scattered within. Toys, tiny shoes, a cracked baby monitor, blankets rolled tight. They were used, Morales muttered, and not in the distant past. He didn't need to explain. The smell said it all. Forensics crawled in slow, documenting every inch. One text surfaced, holding a dusty, folded scrap of paper. She handed it to Dana. It was a drawing. Stick figures. A little girl. A woman. A dog with a red vest. Dana's breath caught. That's Brutus. But the drawing was old. Faded. At least 5 or 6 years. Why would someone have drawn Brutus years ago and hidden it beneath the floor? She turned the paper over. In a child's scrawl. Tell him about the crawl door. Please. Tell him. He's the only one who listens. Her skin went cold. That night, Dana sat on the porch with Brutus at her feet, watching the lights blink across the field. Fireflies danced near the corn rows. Somewhere, a tractor clanked down the county road. But her mind was back in that chamber. What had been done there? Who had known? She pulled the drawing from her pocket again. That red vest. That unmistakable stance. It was Brutus. But he'd only transferred to her unit 3 months ago. Before that, he was with State. Before that, somewhere else. Dana picked up her phone and dialed. A voice answered. Deep crackling. This is Commander Ralph. You're calling about Brutus, I take it? Yes, she said. He uncovered a hidden chamber. And he was drawn in something we found. There was a pause. I thought someone might call about that dog one day. What do you mean? That shepherd was part of a special child recovery unit back in Ohio. Cold cases. One of them stuck with him. Dana stood up. Which case? You ever heard of the Maple Shade disappearances? 5 kids. All vanished between 2016 and 2019. Never found. Last scent trail led to a daycare, but no evidence was recovered. The daycare burned down 6 months later. Owner claimed it was faulty wiring. Case went cold. Dana's blood turned to ice. Brutus was there, Ralph continued. He scratched like hell at the back wall. Wouldn't stop, but nobody listened. They said it was just animal confusion. Until now. Until now. She returned to the daycare before dawn. The building stood empty, a skeleton in the quiet fog. Yellow tape fluttered in the breeze. Dana walked the perimeter, flashlight in hand. Brutus stuck close, ears pinned, nose twitching. Near the rear exit, she noticed something odd. The ivy had been trimmed recently, only in one corner. Beneath it, a vented panel in the foundation. Dana crouched. The panel slid free with a groan of rusted nails. Another crawl space, but this one led outside and down, deep into the earth. Brutus growled, then stepped in first. Dana followed. The tunnel was narrow, silent, carved years ago. Flashlight beams bounced off dirt walls and old piping. Then they reached it, a hidden room maybe 10 feet square. And in the middle of that room, a tiny bed, a rusted cot, a broken toy piano, and on the wall, scratched into the concrete, was something sharp. The night house is under the light. Dana backed out slowly, her heart thudding. This wasn't just a chamber. It was part of something larger, something still buried. And someone had gone to great lengths to keep it that way. The message on the concrete wall clung to Dana's thoughts long after she'd emerged from the crawled tunnel and stood blinking in the dawn light. The night house is under the light. She scrawled it in her notebook, underlined it twice. Whatever it meant, it hadn't been left by accident. Brutus stood beside her, muzzle tilted toward the sky, sending the wind. There was still something down there, still something buried. She closed the notebook. Come on, boy. Let's pay a visit to the archives. The Glenwell County Records office sat above the post office on Main, where the tiles still bore burn marks from a 1962 wiring fire. Dana signed in, nodded to the clerk, and made her way to the far back corner where the old property deeds were kept, original land surveys, changes in ownership, condemned structures. She searched Little Lanterns first. Before it was a daycare, it had been a farmstead owned by a Curtis and Myra LeBeau. No children on record. Before that, the records thinned. Then she looked up Maple Shade. Nothing listed. No properties ever formally registered under that name in Glenwell County. But then she widened her search. 40 miles west, just over the border in Gallatin County, Maple Shade Learning Center. Burned down 2019. Electrical fire. Owner never found. The report listed a partial employee roster. One name jumped out. Francis Arliss. Dana's pulse slowed. It couldn't be coincidence. She checked the dates again. Francis Arliss was working at Maple Shade just months before it burned down. And then, a gap. No records. No employment. No relocation filings. No tax documents. Nothing until 2 years later, when she opened Little Lanterns in Glenwell under a maiden name. Brutus let out a low growl as Dana closed the folder. Whatever Francis had buried under the rug, she'd buried before. She didn't go back to the station right away. Instead, she drove out past the grain elevators to the only person who might have insight into those chambers, someone who once crawled in places like that. That meant Nolan. He lived alone in a trailer off Walker's Quarry, drank too much, talked too little. A former investigator, retired after a mental break no one discussed aloud. But Dana remembered him from when she first joined the department. Sharp, obsessed, a little too willing to chase darkness into corners others wouldn't. She knocked once. He opened the door wearing yesterday's clothes and eyes that hadn't slept. "You found it, didn't you?" he asked. She didn't answer, just handed him the photo of the chamber, the drawing, the scrawl on the wall. Nolan's hands trembled slightly as he held the paper. "I told him back then. There were rooms built for silence, not for hiding, not for safety, for keeping things still." He sat, motioned for her to do the same. Brutus sat at her feet, gaze fixed on Nolan. "She always wore perfume," Nolan murmured. "Vanilla. Heavy. I smelled it in the crawl spaces. You know what I found once? A nail. A girl's nail. Still pink. Embedded in the drywall." Dana leaned in. "What does this mean? The night house is under the light." Nolan looked up slowly. "It's not a metaphor. You think it's a real place?" "I know it is. It's what they used to call the auxiliary house on the old LeBeau property. It sat directly across the main house, beneath the floodlight that stayed on every night. Locals called it the night house because the light never turned off. Ever. No matter the storm. No matter the outage." Dana's brow furrowed. "That property isn't listed. Because it was buried. Condemned in 1987 after a landslide, but not fully collapsed. Who buried it?" Nolan stood, walked to a cabinet, pulled out a rusted survey map, topography, soil markings, elevation notations. He laid it flat. "There." He tapped a box corner in faded red. "See the slope line? That's where the earth gave. But the base of the night house is still beneath. I bet my last bottle on it." Dana studied the map. The Little Lanterns Daycare sat just north of the slope line. The night house was beneath it. By dusk, she and Brutus stood at the tree line behind the daycare, surveying the ridge drop where the terrain leveled again. With the survey map folded in her back pocket and a crowbar in hand, she stepped carefully through the underbrush. Every step was loose soil, dried pine needles, silence. Brutus stopped. He barked once, then began to dig. Dana fell to her knees beside him, pulled aside the bramble. Underneath, a trapdoor, old, iron-rimmed, almost fossilized in the earth. She jammed the crowbar beneath it and heaved. It groaned but gave. A rush of stale, fetid air rushed up like breath from a long-dead mouth. Flashlight in hand, she descended the crumbling steps. The night house was real, and it waited in the dark. She stepped into a hallway. The walls were stone and thick with condensation. Old bulbs dangled dead from wire strands. The space curved narrow and labyrinthine. It wasn't just a shelter or a cellar. It was a system. Each room she passed bore marks, scratches, drawings, hooks rusted into wood. All too small, all made for children. Then she reached the final room. There, in the center, was a metal-framed chair with leather straps, a tape recorder, and behind it, a shelf of labeled tapes. Hundreds. Her stomach turned. She pulled the nearest one. Subject number 4, compliance test, April 17th. She didn't press play. She couldn't. Not yet. Brutus whined, pushed forward. His snout reached the far wall and stilled. Dana approached. More drawings. But these weren't done in pencil. They were in dried red. One stuck out. A crude figure, a girl with braids. And beside her, a large dog. Same shape, same stance. Brutus. But the girl. Dana froze. It wasn't just any child. She recognized the face. She'd seen it in dozens of missing persons reports growing up, on posters. Milk cartons. Casey Lynn Wheeler. Last seen in 2017. Abducted on her walk home from school. Never found. Dana backed away slowly, chest pounding. It wasn't just one child. Or 5. This place had been used for decades, and someone had kept the lights on. She didn't make it out alone. As she retraced her steps, she heard the scuff of a shoe against stone. Someone else was down there. She spun, flashlight sweeping. Nothing. Then from behind, a shadow. She turned just as the figure lunged. The flashlight clattered to the floor, beams spinning wildly. Hands closed around her throat, forcing her to the wall. Then teeth. Brutus hit the attacker with such force it knocked them both down. The figure let out a choked yell, high-pitched, breathless, and scrambled into the dark. Dana coughed, gasped, and dropped to her knees. She raised her light again, but the person was gone. A flash of white hair had caught her eye, and the scent, heavy, artificial vanilla. Mrs. Frances Arliss. She was still protecting the night house. Later, under emergency lights outside the daycare, Dana sat on the tailgate of an ambulance. Her throat bore red marks. Her hands were cut. Brutus sat beside her, gaze alert. "We need to unseal that tunnel and get a forensic team inside," Morales said. "And someone better find that woman. Now." Dana didn't speak. She stared at the drawing again. The same one from the first chamber. The same girl. Casey Lynn Wheeler. They never found her body. But now there was a chance. And Brutus had known from the beginning. Had remembered something no one else did. In that moment, Dana realized something deeper, colder. The tapes, the drawings, the trapdoors. None of this was just Frances. She hadn't acted alone. Someone had funded the night house. Someone with power. And they were still out there, waiting in the dark. The investigation became a vortex, pulling an entire town and twisting everything Dana thought she knew about Glenwell into shadow. The night house wasn't just a forgotten basement beneath a daycare. It was a wound in the town's history, raw and festering. The media circled, the children whispered, and the parents grew frantic. But Dana's focus was razor-sharp. There were tapes to catalog, victims to identify, and the mastermind to find. The forensic team worked in shifts, crawling through the tunnels, uncovering artifacts that seemed torn from nightmares. Doll parts scattered on dust-covered floors. Faded photographs tucked in side cracks. Names scratched in desperation along the walls. Every piece pointed to the victims Frances Arliss had hidden or protected. Dana paced a brightly lit command center set up in the community center. Chief Morales stood beside her, a folder in hand. "We ran her prints against the National Registry. Frances Arliss isn't who she says she is." Dana frowned. "She's Ruth Marlowe. Changed her name years ago, after the Maple Shade fire." Dana swallowed hard. "Why?" "Records say she was charged with child endangerment, sentenced, then disappeared after a mysterious release." The pieces clicked, but the picture grew darker. "Who else is involved?" Morales shook his head. "We don't know, but the tapes, one of them mentioned a sponsor. Someone wealthy, someone untouchable." Dana stared at the wall of photos, letters, and maps she had plastered across the room. She was haunted by the girl's face, Casey Lynn Wheeler, staring back with hollow eyes. Days later, Dana received an anonymous envelope. Inside was a single USB drive and a note. "The light shines for those who dare to see. Watch carefully." Back at her desk, Dana plugged in the drive. The screen flickered to life, revealing shaky footage from inside the night house. A camera trained on one of the padded rooms. A child sat alone, trembling. Then the door creaked. Frances, no, Ruth, entered, speaking softly. "You're safe here," she whispered. But the child's eyes betrayed the terror beneath her calm voice. Then the door slammed shut. Dana's breath caught. The video cut to black. The next days were a blur of interviews, arrests, and revelations. Parents who had trusted Frances revealed bitter regrets. Townsfolk whispered of long-ignored rumors about missing children and secret shelters. Then the unthinkable happened. Dana was called to the hospital. Brutus had been poisoned. Someone had slipped something into his water bowl. The dog's recovery was slow and uncertain. Dana sat aside, tears unchecked. This was war. With Brutus weak but alive, Dana doubled down. She traced bank records, followed shadows into the town's elite circles, and uncovered a network of silence bound by fear and money. The final piece fell into place during a clandestine meeting with an informant, a janitor at the now-closed Mapleshade Learning Center. "I saw the men who visited the night house," he said, voice shaking. "They weren't from this town. They brought bags and cameras. They watched the kids like they were cattle." Dana's heart hammered. "Who?" she demanded. The man swallowed hard. Local businessmen, politicians, a judge. Betrayal cut deeper than any wound. The raid on the hidden property came just after midnight. Armed officers moved in, lanterns slicing through the fog. Inside, they found more than cages and chambers. They found proof. Documents, photographs, recordings, evidence that shattered reputations and toppled careers. Frances, Ruth, was found in a locked room, her eyes empty but defiant. "Why?" Dana asked quietly. Ruth's voice was barely a whisper. "Because someone had to stop them. The night house, it was their doing. I was the only one left who could hold the darkness back." The confession left Dana reeling. Was Ruth protector or prisoner? Savior or monster? Weeks later, the town tried to heal. Brutus returned to duty, slower but determined. Dana watched him with a mixture of pride and sorrow. The tapes were being played for the courts. The victims named. The guilty facing justice. But the scars lingered. Dana stood one evening on Lantern Hill, looking down at the daycare, quiet now, a shell of its past. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows. And under the fading light, she whispered to Brutus, "We did what we could." The dog rested his head on her boot. In the silence, the past held its breath, and the town, for the first time in years, began to breathe again.